Welcome to the Roller Coaster of Midlife live on YouTube today. As always, on a Tuesday, I have Holly Boxenhorn joining me. And it was after last week's episode that we got chit-chatting at the end, and she brought up a really important topic, something that I haven't really considered for a long time, and that's ageism. So, Holly, maybe you could start off by giving us the backstory on this.
Absolutely. As a midlife transition coach, I would think that I'm pretty on top of, ageism in the sense that I'm not one who would ever indulge in it. But I caught myself red-handed. And ironically, it was the result of watching Sex and the City. I don't know if you're a fan of Sex and the City, but I was back in the day, and they came out last summer with a reboot, and then they came out with another one this past summer. I think it's called, and that's
It's like, and just like that.
and just like that, exactly. Truth is, the jury's not in for me whether or not I'm loving this season. It's a little over the top. Some of the stuff that's there.
Okay, so what do you consider over the top? Because
right,
I never watched Sex in the City, but I know, like, not that my husband watched it, but I think he saw a couple of clips on it, and I thought that was like some of the things were really racy for TV at the time.
well, this is really racy, but you know what? I'm not a prude by any means, but it almost felt like it was just overdone, like it was like just for the shit's sake. So Miranda, one of the women, she recently has found out she's a lesbian and she's in a love relationship. So at one point there was her putting on a strap on. There was,
they actually showed that.
Yes, they did. Yes,
and
they
it's on Netflix.
HBO Max.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know where we get it here in Canada.
Yeah. There was a threesome because her lover was married once and this weird scenario happened. So it's just a very weird thing going on. Cool, whatever, threesome. I mean, I guess if I'm watching porn, I'm watching an R-rated movie, I expect that.
And then, do you watch a lot of porn, Holly?
Right, that's great. Now, sure, let's all watch porn. But then this was even better. Charlotte's husband needed help learning how to ejaculate. So he had to go to the doctor and he was told to do Kegels, and they're showing them doing these Kegels. Listen, I get midlife men have issues too. It's just everything seems so like in your face. But with that being said, the redeeming factor about this one particular episode was that they took the opportunity to put the magnifying glass on ageism. And so they kind of used Carrie to throw her under the bus, where she is ageist. She is a midlife woman like us, and she has an opportunity to work with her former boss, who was the editor of Vogue magazine, who is Candice Bergen. You know,
right? Murphy Brown,
so, yeah, right. So she, she's been around for a while, and so she's aged, enormously. And then she's asking her, like, because she's got to be in her 70s, maybe almost 80s. I don't know.
Yeah, she's got to be in her 70s,
right? So she's asking Carrie to come aboard to promote some kind of new platform for older women. And Carrie at the time is trying to promote her book. And so she's thinking that maybe it's going to, be bad press for her to be photographed with older women. Meanwhile, she finally decides to go to this event. And who's at this event? Gloria Steinem. I mean, the number one feminist of we don't have respect for her, who do we, right?
Yeah.
So she, all of a sudden, it dawns on her and kind of slaps her in the face, like, what's wrong with me? But there's this whole, time with through the episode where she's really conflicted about, here I am in midlife, do I want to join on to the next part of my life, which is in my 70s or maybe early 80s, because she's also, much older also, Gloria. So it was interesting. And that was probably the redeemable value that episode brought up. And ironically enough, the very next day I was looking for a a stock image for my blog post. For my blog post, I do monthly, and I'm just looking for an image that I can put on. And I found myself saying, no, that woman looks too old. Or I was saying, no, that woman looks too young. She doesn't look midlife enough. And then I'm like, what the F, Holly? Like, here you are, practicing ageism yourself. I went there immediately. And for someone who I would have normally, said, I don't participate in any of that. Here I am. I was doing it. And so it just brought up a curious moment thinking, maybe we all need to kind of step back. I'm sure I'm not the only midlife woman who doesn't have necessarily it all in check. And what's the conversation around it? So I wanted to put that out in an email this week with my community, because I'm curious to hear what other people would have to say. So that's what brought me to this conversation today.
And, I can relate, because there have been people that I've wanted to invite on the show and talk about midlife, but then I also want to be careful that I don't insult them by telling them that they're midlife.
Right.
Because when does midlife start? Well, if you're going to live to 80, midlife starts at 40.
Yeah.
And there's so many variables. And how do you define what midlife is? And also you add to that, there are midlife women that are 40, that their kids are high school, college. There are midlife women that are 40 that still have little kids at home.
Very much, because it's changed so much. Some people having children later.
And some people aren't having kids until they hit 40. In fact, I want to say Candice Bergen, when she did Murphy Brown, I'm going to say she was 40-ish. And that's when they introduced her having a baby. Okay. And she was having a baby and she was single, and it was like all these different things.
I didn't know that. I never watched that show, but I think 40 through, your 60s is midlife. And I say that because, physically, that's where the changes really happen. So if you're looking at like menopause and completing it, I lengthen it because I do think we all live, we're all living much longer lives. So, typically, though most women are through menopause in their 50s, I still think that, the 60s people are working, they're still working, even full time, so they're not necessarily moving to retirement. Some are. So for me, I work with women from 40 to 60. Through their 60s. My eldest client is going to be 67 this year. And she looks phenomenal. And she is just, she's a rock star. So again, then there's the 40s who, look much older, so who's to say who looks like a midlife woman? What does that mean? And on what level, am I being ageist, by those standards?
But, I'm going to say that it's not, I don't think it's that it's practicing ageism, because there isn't a clear definition of what midlife is. True. There just isn't. Like, the range from 40 to 60 is massive.
Yeah.
It's a big range, and there's so much that can happen.
It really is. Yeah.
You can be, like we said, you can be a young mom to being a grandmother anywhere in that age range.
It is. Yep.
So I don't think it's ageism. I just think there's been lack of representation of what midlife is, because I can't remember if we've talked about this before, but I mean, if you look at the show, The Golden Girls.
Yes, we did talk about this. Yeah.
They were in their 50s.
Well, that's what's so ironic, is that you have Sex in the City. The women are the same age.
Yeah.
And then, we want to talk, what they represented as, being older than, in the Golden Girls with, and thinking about that, like women who have turned gray. Women are turning gray and they look phenomenal. Like they look gorgeous. They're just embracing it. And it has nothing to do, but before that kind of was the signal, when you had the blue-haired silver grandma, that kind of thing that's going on. That's not really, what's happening nowadays.
Well, let's look at it outside of the Golden Girls, because we're influenced by the shows that we watched growing up.
Very much.
So growing up, what influences did we have on midlife and midlife women, even now, besides Sex in the City and Just Like That? What influences are there out there? What representation do midlife women have in, quote, the public eye?
Well, that's what you bring up in a very important point. That's just the point. It's not until recently that older women are still in the public eye. Women were not, their careers, if they were their lives, were shortened, back then. We've done some tremendous work in this area that, older women are represented in just killing it, whether they're celebrities or they're not. But that's most recently. That's really so that we don't really have any role models.
No, we don't. And in fact, here in Canada, I'm going to say it was about a year ago, one of our major news anchors was a woman who had been on, this one news station for decades, Lisa LaFlamme. And she turned gray during COVID. Right. And just never dyed her hair. She went from being, beautiful brunette to, like you said, having this beautiful silver hair. And a younger CEO came in and basically shit canned her.
Wow.
And the only story that we ever saw was because she looked too old, meanwhile, you have the male news anchors that are near on their deathbeds and they're still doing the nightly news.
Oh, man. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I think that was a big spotlight on it for us in Canada. And I'm going to say Wendy Mesley, she was on CBC. I believe she's spoken out about being canceled over her age. Not 100% sure on that. And then she has a podcast with somebody that I want to say she used to be on radio. Her name is Mo. I can't remember her last name. Yeah. So we're starting to see women.
Right. We really are in the early stages.
Yeah. It is, yet again, something that the women of the 80s have to blaze another trail on.
Absolutely. Yep. And and that's exactly why you and I are here, is changing that narrative, is, really, putting the spotlight on the advantages that come with midlife, versus the disadvantages, and helping women and supporting women so that they can age powerfully, and I guess pave that way for our young adult women.
And I don't know if this fits into ageism, but it's something I experienced. I was part of this women's professional group, and there was, we formed a new sort of chapter. So there are 3 of us that were, sort of more senior in our positions. And then there were maybe 6 other younger women that were part of the group. And I actually ended up leaving the group because they came to me and they said they didn't like the way I responded in emails. I'm like, what are you talking about? And they said, well, you just say what you have to say. I'm like, oh, so I'm not sugarcoating things enough. I'm not being flowery enough.
Right.
And it was basically, they sort of said to me, they're like, well, you have to change how you do things. And I thought for a minute and I'm like, but wait a second, we're adults here.
Right.
Why is it me that's just saying like, hey, I need this document. Can you send it? Like, why are you not putting on your big girl panties and just sending a fucking document?
Yeah, it's not like you're insulting anybody in the email. You're just, like you said.
And that's why I'm like, is that an ageism thing where we're having to conform to meet the needs of younger generations instead of the younger generations like realizing that, hey, wait a second.
Yeah.
Maybe not everybody has to cater to my every insecurity. I don't know if it was an ageism thing, but it was something that it just struck me as really odd.
Were you amongst different ages of women, or were they all older women?
There were two that were sort of my age or a bit older, and then sort of 6 that were, I'm going to say, like in their 30s.
Oh, so you had a wide range. Yeah,
we had a wide range, and
yeah,
it was just like, no. No,
Yeah.
if if you're that fragile and you need that much sugar coating, then this is just not the place. And I left. I quit the organization.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think whether it could have been very well related to ageism. But quite frankly, I think that's just, all about, absorbing other people's standards, and agendas, whether it's that, who we should be, how we have to show up. Now, I understand, obviously, we're not here, you're not going to, if someone was insulting somebody in an email, that would be another story.
It's different. Yeah.
Right. But everyone has a different way of operating. But that's like a whole lot of, like I said, shitting on someone. And we certainly grew up with a lot of that. And I think that, that dies hard. Like that's, there's still a whole lot of that around about how we as women should show up. So again, does that fall under ageism? Maybe. If not, definitely.
Well, actually, I'm going to say it does, because isn't there a certain level of ageism when it comes to what a woman should and should not wear at a certain age, or how she should or shouldn't carry her hair?
Right.
And I found myself doing that to me.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, is that something a 50-year-old woman wears?
No,
it's like,
it's where is it creeping in? And again, it's so insidious because it's part of, everything we've always known. So we don't even realize how it could seep in. And that's what really, that episode really brought to my attention, because again, I am someone who is, trying to, change the narrative. I'm certainly not going to get behind it, but here I was, on some level, practicing it by saying this woman looked too old or this woman looks too young. And certainly, saying something along the lines, I'll catch myself, I'm a 54-year-old woman. I really can't see myself wearing that, or that color nail polish or that color lipstick, whatever it might be, and I wonder how much of it, we also hide behind, that it's easy to always say, as we do, I'm too old, for that, or, anything like, so I think it hedges a fine line between how we're socialized and it just as a knee-jerk reaction to also how much are we letting it hold us back and make excuses for not fully participating in our lives. Like, like one of my mantras, my, midlife mantra is like, I will determine the fullness of my life, not my age. And though I might, as I get older, become limited, maybe physically, yes, because your body ages, that doesn't mean it's going to prevent me from participating fully in my life. There are other ways I can still participate fully, even if I can't run a 10-minute mile, or get on my Peloton or hike, whatever it is, what I'm saying? Or get up the stairs without pulling myself up, whatever it might be. So, I think that, again, we need to take a look at this. And that was really my point, how much are we just don't realize that it's embedded in us? How much are we hiding behind it? And how much are we using it as an excuse to not live our life fully? There is so much.
I think that one, using it as an excuse, I think that catches a lot of women.
Yeah.
It does.
Just, there's so much available to us in the second half of our lives. So much more than I think in our younger lives. Yes, a lot of developmental milestones are behind us, 100%. But God damn it, we have so many life lessons under our belt. We know our own bullshit at this point, and we really just we're tired. We're really tired of really listening to other people, tell us what to do. Because we've been doing it for so many years, and there's so much piss and vinegar behind that. There really just is. Like, you don't get that unless you've lived this many years of life. You just don't. You don't.
And I guess that's the trick, is being able to get to the point where you say, I don't give a shit what other people say.
Yeah.
And just do what you want to do.
Yeah. And shine a line on the advantage. And I've definitely said this to you before, Lucie, because it infuriates me. Every decade comes with advantage and disadvantages, like every decade. So you're not going to tell me that, necessarily your 20s are so much better. That's where the expression youth is wasted on the young. right? Because
Mhm.
they don't know, how great they have that, luxury to lean on their youth to get them through, poor sleep or poor eating habits, those kind of things. But there's advantages and disadvantages to every single decade. So why do we have to say it's all downhill from now? Like, why? Who made that determination? Doesn't make any sense to me. I think we're in a most powerful position than ever. Yes, I'll be the first one to say it's a bit of a shitstorm midlife because there's so much going and changing around in our lives.
Oh,
But
yeah. But I
it's
think,
also,
I think for those of us that have been able to acknowledge that is just the life, that is like, if you mentioned every decade has its benefits and its drawbacks.
yeah,
But you can also say that every decade comes its own shitstorm.
absolutely. I agree.
And it's just we just have it's not even a different layer, because I mean, even your hormones when you're going through having kids, I certainly didn't feel semi-normal again, at least until my kids were maybe a year old, because
Yeah,
your hormones, like, you're going through
yeah,
pregnancy, then your body's trying to get out of pregnancy, and
yeah.
then you get pregnant again. And so I just think, once you acknowledge that the shitstorm is always going to be there, it's just how you choose to relate to it, and what you're going to
Exactly.
like, and what you're going to let bother you.
Right, because there always is going to be discomfort, and there's always going to be curveballs. When I was younger, I suffered from terrible menstrual cramps that I had to be like heavily medicated. So for me, not having my period is like, I mean, listen, going through the change, maybe not easy, but it's like I'm liberated now that I don't have to deal with those kind of debilitating cramps every single month for about a week to 5 days. So, to me, that's an advantage. Yeah, so, again, we could say this about every decade. So why not shine the light on the advantage? Why not define your own terms on how you're going to move forward? Somewhere along the line, it was defined for us. And it's so not accurate. It's just so not accurate, especially in today's modern world where we have so many improved health situations,
Yeah.
to take care of our health and live longer lives and those kind of things. I don't know. It really gets my goat. It
And
does get my goat.
really, when you look at sort of the, call it, modern history of women, it's been said that we're only the third generation
I know if she had
to
that.
go through sort of menopause because of our life expectancy plan. So you can see how, I mean, yes, patriarchal society is always sort of quash that feminine energy, but you can see how and why it's become so difficult to actually highlight the midlife woman.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And especially when you're talking about something like the workforce, there are a lot of women that have had to opt out of the workforce because of the severity of their symptoms
That's right.
through midlife. And I said for a while that if I had a job where I had to get in my car and drive 30-45 minutes to work, be there for 8 hours, and then come
Yeah,
home and do that,
yeah,
I wouldn't have been able to do it. I
yeah,
had insomnia for better part of 4 or 5 years.
yeah.
And when you consistently have to try and get through the day on 3 or 4 hours sleep, if you're lucky, you can't do that. And women are dropping under the workforce because there is a lack of understanding about what women do. It's not a case
Very
of
little support.
it's
Very
not a
little
case of
support.
suck it up. And I
Yeah.
believe the UK is the first country to really sort of acknowledge menopause as, I don't want to say disability, but like a health concern in the workplace,
Yeah,
that
agreed.
type of thing.
They're ahead of us for sure, and leading the way, which is good to see that happen. But yeah, like you said, it's women who suffer terribly from menopause go through a number of years, and everything in their lives are affected, impacted by it. Their jobs, their relationships, their own sense of sanity, and there's very little support there for women in this arena. Very little.
And understanding. And because I was putting a bunch of posts together about, call them celebrities, women speaking out about menopause and midlife. I can't remember who it was, but it was a female actress that was saying, she was having trouble because you have a lot of brain fog and you
Yeah.
can really feel like thinking and remembering it can be a challenge sometimes. And, they used to call it out on the set when she was, forgetful. Or yet when you have a hot flash, some women, you see it before they feel it, they start turning red. So, I
Yeah.
mean, God forbid you start having a hot flash.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I saw one quote, I think it was Michelle Obama. She was on Air Force One, all of a sudden having this massive hot flash where she was dripping with sweat, knowing that she had to walk down the stairs and be composed.
Right. Exactly. And again, who's really talking about it? We're just hearing this now. We're
hearing it, but it's like, wouldn't it have been great if we lived in a world where Michelle Obama, either her people came out and said, you know what, right now she's taking 5, she needs some AC, she's having a hot flash.
Right. That's
Women
right.
would have been like, oh, take half hour. I get that.
How assuring would that be?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what we need to normalize. We need to, it's the same thing even with my young kids who, are typically marked with, in their 20s, I would say more anxiety, because that's when you're trying to figure yourself out. Normalize, there's nothing wrong with you. Of course you feel doubtful. Of course you're anxious because your future is uncertain. Like, we don't normalize unpleasant, uncomfortable, painful emotions. And we only normalize the good.
That's because we live in the Instagram world of posting your best pic.
And that's another whole thing. I mean, the one thing you can know, and I can get up on a soapbox. I am not a fan of toxic positivity.
No,
I think it does such a disservice to us all. You cannot move forward accurately or strategically unless you're being honest with what you're experiencing. So you've got to keep it real. And the truth is, there's only one way our emotions come through us, both the pleasant and the unpleasant. So if I'm going to stifle any negative emotions, you're stifling the possibility of bringing in more joy and happiness, because you're just flatlining your emotions in general. There's not one button that says, I'm just going to put a pause and not feel my anxiety, my discomfort, my sadness, my isolation. I'm not going to feel any of that. Emotions come all together. So when you dull one, you dull them all.
And that's it. I'm doing a course in mindful meditation so I can teach it. And there's one part of that. It's, just observe the feeling. It's neither good nor bad.
Right.
It just
is.
The
feeling. Right. It passes.
It's just a feeling. And it's like, acknowledge it. And where is this coming from? Okay, cool. This is great. And you just sort of let it pass. And once you can get into that position of saying, okay, yeah, so this didn't work out. Okay, it's neither good nor bad. It just didn't work out. Okay,
about it. This makes you feel comfy. Like, I think I might have said this to you. I'm not sure if I have, but like, I have never had a person or a client say to me, God damn it, I wish these happy feelings would end.
I hope this passes. Yeah,
I wish this passes.
How long is this happiness going to hang around?
As soon as we're uncomfortable, like, I just wish it passes. We never say, of course we don't, but this is what it is. That's called the human condition. And the sooner we recognize that, it's just like we can all just breathe a little bit, I think.
Yeah. And I think if for anyone listening, maybe just for the next day, when you feel something, or let's just say when you feel something shitty and you have a bad thought about something, you're like, oh yeah, that sucks. Just reframe it and say, oh, that didn't work out how I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
And just like, let it go.
I talk to myself a lot. My poor husband.
So do I.
He's like, are you talking to me? Or no, you're talking to, I'm like, no, just talking to myself. And I'll say to myself a lot of time, Holly, it's completely normal that you feel this way right now, because this turned out this way, or that turned out that way, and it didn't turn out. It is completely normal that you feel this way. It's okay. So if you want to have a little pity party or throw a tantrum for a little bit, but we know we can't stay there for the long run, because that's not going to help you. But I talk to myself all the time, like, it's okay, Holly, it's okay. Right. So normal that you feel this way. And then now what? And now what?
I'm laughing because I talk to myself all the time, and I sort of talk to, whatever angels or whoever around me. And I guess I came out of our room today. My husband's office is at the bottom of our staircase. Our bedroom is at the top of the staircase. And I get to the bottom of the staircase. He goes, wow, what? I'm like, huh? He's like, well, you walked into the room and said, wow. I'm like, well, Jesus, I guess I forgot what I was so excited about by the time I got to the bottom of the stairs. I have no idea. I'm like, I said, wow. He's like, yeah. I'm like, I don't remember.
I can understand your plight. I mean, I'm constantly talking to myself, and then it'll be like, "What did you say?" I'm like, "It's not.
I don't remember. Yeah, it doesn't
If it
matter.
was for you, I'd let you know. I'd let you know."
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I know we went a little off target, but all in all, I do think that, you know, we need to step back and we just need to assess and have a conversation about this and be responsible, to see where maybe we could start changing the narrative within our own selves and catch ourselves from, because language is very powerful.
It is.
And, how you speak to yourself is how you're going to then, inevitably feel and then behave. So if you keep saying, I'm too old, I'm too, or I, can't teach an old dog new tricks, well, then, that's exactly what will be the case.
Yeah.
Because, either you can, what is that expression from, I think, Ralph Waldo Emerson? He said, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is true. So,
it is.
Both are very powerful. So be careful about what you're saying to yourself, even if it's not necessarily directed to you and you're just pointing around and saying, oh, that person looks too old or too young. What does that mean to you then?
Yeah.
Because when I did see Candice Bergen and I saw Gloria, I was like, wow, oh, they got old. And then I caught myself. I got myself in check because I'm really starting to really embrace the turkey neck and all that stuff.
Yeah, that comes up.
I am. And I'm like, so are you, Holly? That's okay. Like, I was like,
we all got older
20 years from now. Exactly. So I checked that really quick. That one I'm getting better at. But the next day when I started to find that stock photo, I just saw myself go there immediately. So I too have some work to do on it.
I think we can all be the change we want to see.
Yes.
Starting with how we show up in our own lives. Definitely.
Exactly. Yep. True.
So to learn more about Holly and how she can help you and to get some of our great gifts, make sure you check out the show notes. I am going to have all of the links in there. And make sure you hit subscribe and like so that you're notified the next time we go live, because I will be live here again next week with Holly. So until then, have a great week.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.